Good morning and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Bakersfield. We're so glad that you joined us this morning. We are a loving, affirming, inclusive community. We embrace you just as you are, and we love you just as you are, for God made you that way so perfectly for such good purpose. Welcome this morning. We have a wonderful service for you. I'm so glad you're here, and we'll begin with a song from Sharon Whaley, as well as Merritt Holloway on piano.
Let there be peace. I am a stand for peace. Let there be love. I am a stand for love. Let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. Let there be peace. I am a stand for peace. Let there be love. I am a stand for love. Let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. We are making a new world now. We are making a new world now. That was a simplified version because that's what I'm doing today, is keeping things simple. And today, in that theme, I brought our reading is from the Tao of Pu. And this is from the Pu Wei, chapter of the Pu Wei. Now we come to what could be called the most characteristic element of Taoism in action. In Chinese, it is known as Wu Wei. It is also the most characteristic element of Pu in action. In English, it's not known as much of anything in particular. We believe that it's time that someone noticed it and called it something, so we will call it the Pu Wei. Literally, Wu Wei means without doing, causing, or making. But practically speaking, it means without meddlesome, combative, or egotistical effort. It seems rather significant that the character Wei developed from the symbols for a clawing hand and a monkey, since the term Wu Wei means no going against the nature of things, no clever tampering, and no monkeying around. The efficiency of Wu Wei is like that of water flowing over and around the rocks in its path, not the mechanical straight line approach that usually ends up short-circuiting natural laws, but one that evolves from an inner sensitivity to the natural rhythm of things. Let's take an example from the writings of Shao Tse. At the gorge of Lu, the great waterfall plunges for thousands of feet, its spray visible for miles. In the churning waters below, no living creature can be seen. One day, Kung Fu Tse was standing at a distance from the pool's edge when he saw an old man being tossed about in the turbulent water. He called to his disciples, and together they ran to rescue the victim, but by the time they reached the water, the old man had climbed down onto the bank and was walking along, singing to himself. Kung Fu Tse hurried up to him. "You would have to be a ghost to survive that," he said, "but you seem to be a man instead. What secret power do you have?" "Nothing special," the old man replied. "I began to learn when very young and grew up practicing it. Now I am certain of its success. I go down with the water and I come up with the water. I follow it and forget myself. I survive because I don't struggle against the water's superior power. That's all." When we learn to work with our own inner nature and with the natural laws operating around us, we reach the level of Wu Wei. Then we work with the natural order of things and operate on the principle of minimal effort. Since the natural world follows that principle, it does not make mistakes. Mistakes are made or imagined by man, the creature with the overloaded brain who separates himself from the supporting network of natural laws by interfering and trying too hard. Not like Pu, the most effortless bear we've ever seen. So now if you would join me in closing your eyes, if that feels right to you, and taking some deep breaths, just centering yourself in that thought, that effortlessness that is the nature of God. For I know that there is only one Spirit, one God, one eternal creative mind, everywhere, everyone present and met in this moment of now. I know that this one creative intelligence is the abundance, the power, the beauty, the love, the light that is life itself. And I know that this creative intelligence, this spirit, expresses itself in and as and through its creations. And so I know that this infinite intelligence shows up as me today, and it shows up as everyone here present, here in person, online, and later in the future, whoever, whenever they are watching this Sunday celebration. I know that now is the moment where we step into that knowingness of spirit. And so I know that today is a day that is blessed. I know that it is effortless in its flow. Everything just flows and moves easily in the mind of God, for it is all one thing. And so I know that this Sunday celebration is a time of blessing as we come together in community, as Reverend Gregory inspires us with his message, as Merritt inspires us with his music, for our board, for our practitioners, and every technician person that makes this center, and particularly the members and our community that make this special holy place where we come together in that love of God, in that love of spirit, remembering the truth about who we are. And so in this gratitude, I release this word, knowing that it is already made manifest in the mind of God, and it is just for us to step into joyfully, effortlessly, and in love. And so I release this word, and together we anchor this by saying, and so it is. And now Merritt will bless us with some inspirational music.
Good morning again, and thank you, Merritt, for that. What a powerful piece that is. Thank you so much for that. Blessings to everyone as we continue this journey at home, this journey during this, whatever we call it, shelter in place, quarantine, being with ourselves, spiritual retreat, whatever it is that we call it, we always know that something amazing is calling forth. And whenever there's a huge disruption like we're having right now, disruption in our patterns, a disruption in the way that things are going, that's a key indicator that we're in a period of great transformation. So I really welcome us into and bless each of us as we do this journey, and commend each of us for how we're doing this journey. We're all doing it the best that we can, and we're all working with this and moving with this. I had a great discovery in the last couple days here. There's a song by Donna Summer, and I just happened to discover it because I was surfing on YouTube yesterday and listening to all different old songs and everything, and then I came across Donna Summer's MacArthur Park. And MacArthur Park is a song for me that I've always used as my sad song. When I'm feeling sad and I really just want to be with the sadness, because we need to feel all of our feelings. Like during this time we're in right now, we need to feel all of our feelings so that energy continues to flow in us, that energy doesn't get stuck in us. And so I use that as my sad song, but I always just would joke with people and say, hey, I have no idea what that song actually means. MacArthur's Park is melting in the rain, and there's a cake in there, and I don't know how I can make this cake again. And I was like, what? I don't know what it means, but somehow it takes me to my sad place, and I can be with sadness with that song. Well, I finally discovered what that song's about. It's actually about this man who wrote the song, Jimmy Webb, in the summer and fall of 1967. It was inspired by a breakup that he had of a relationship, and he was dating a woman, and they used to meet quite frequently in MacArthur Park in Los Angeles. And that was a place where they celebrated a lot of good times. And so he says that when he wrote that song, he was in MacArthur Park, and all the things in the song he actually saw in the park. So he says that there's nothing that's fabricated. The old men playing checkers by the trees, he actually saw in MacArthur Park. And he saw a cake that was left out in the rain that day. It was raining that day. And so he actually saw in MacArthur Park all these things. So mystery solved. I no longer just have to say, this is my song, but I don't know what it means. So anyway, that's my little side note this morning. I want to start by sharing a poem by Hafiz, who is a Sufi poet back in the 18th century, so about 300 years ago he was writing this, and this poem is called Absolutely Clear. Here it goes. He says, "Don't surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut more deep. Let it ferment and season you as few human or even divine ingredients can. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need of God absolutely clear." I thought that was so appropriate for the times that we're in right now, as we might resist these feelings of isolation, loneliness, whatever feelings that we have. And I love how the poem talks about how that brings us into such a tender place in our heart. And it brings us to such a place possibly of being so open to the divine, so open to spirit in our life. Our topic today is the Tao of Freedom. And Taoism is it's a Chinese philosophy, where it originated in China, and it's part philosophy, part religion, and it emphasizes doing what is natural, going with the flow, in accordance with the Tao, a cosmic force that flows through all things. So according to Taoism, one's ultimate goal is to live at peace with the way of the Tao and recognize that everything that happens in life is should be accepted as part of the eternal force. Sharon shared a great Pooh story about the Tao, and I have a similar story about the river. So we were both on the same page this morning here. But first, I want to share a story, a true story that happened to me just in the past week. And this Taoism really is based on that all things ultimately work together for good. And so if we surrender into the way of life and the way that things are flowing, really surrender, we can really be in that flow of good. We don't have to resist life. And so I had an experience like that in the last week, and it had to do with a vendor that I needed to pay from my ministry. And I rarely write checks these days. Usually everything happens electronically, pay for everything electronically. Well, in this case, the electronic way just wasn't going to work, and we finally said, well, hey, let's just do the old-fashioned way. We'll just write a check. So I wrote this check out. And I told the person, I'm going to put it in the mail for you today. Well, I went to the post office, and the post office, they changed their hours. So they closed at 2 p.m. Got to the post office, they're closed. I'm like, oh, darn. I told the person I'm going to mail it today, and now I'm not going to. I said, okay, well, no problem. I'll mail it. That was a Friday. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to have to mail it on Monday. So Monday came, and I was sitting at home, and I said, oh, look at my calendar. It's open, after early morning meeting. It's open. I'll easily make it to the post office by 2 o'clock today. Well, I got engrossed in my work, and the next thing I know, 2 o'clock had come and gone. And I said, oh, man, now I'm really not on my word here, because now here Monday has gone by, and I still haven't sent. I was really getting frustrated with myself, and I was really like, oh, man, come on, get it together here. Well, then Tuesday rolled around, and I was like, okay, I am definitely getting it in the mail today. And I was sitting there in the silence, and suddenly this idea popped into my mind. It said, when you switched banks from Wells Fargo to Chase, did you ever order new checks? And I thought, I don't think I did. So I went and looked, and sure enough, the checkbook I had was from Wells Fargo, because I just pulled the checkbook out, wrote a check, boom, done. So what this delay helped me with was to not write a check on a closed account, which would have caused all kinds of difficulties, bounced and everything else. And it just reminded me of how not to resist life. Like life was trying to save me. Life was trying to rescue me from myself. And I was pushing so hard against it. Come on. And so life was working for me even when I wasn't working for me. I was working against my good, and my good, life was trying to give me my good, save me some trouble, save me some difficult. This infinite spirit's infinite intelligence that goes before me and prepares the way. This grace that even in my fumblings and mistakes, this grace that is still operating. Don't we know that few of us would have made it this far in life without grace? If we were just left to our own devices and there were no grace, how could we possibly have made it this far? But grace is part of life. That divine grace, that life is working for our good even when we seem to be fumbling and making mistakes and doing this and that. There's a treatment from Ernest Holmes that I like to repeat. In that treatment, he says, no mistakes have been made, no mistakes are being made, and no mistakes shall be made. It's a great truth. A great truth. We're always in the flow of that one life, and grace is always taking place in our life. Ernest Holmes said, the road to freedom lies not through mysteries or occult performances, but through the intelligent use of nature's forces and laws. Just aligning with what is, aligning with that one power, aligning with that realization that all things are working together for my good. My invitation today really is, as I share everything with you today, my invitation really is, how can we loosen our grip a little bit? How can we loosen just a little bit? What way could you loosen your grip on life just a little bit and open the way for that grace to come more fully present, where life could be a little bit easier, right? We're always thinking, I got to do it, I got to make it happen. And where could we loosen up a little bit? Where could we let go a little bit to make space to be in the flow of life, to allow life to happen? This practice of surrender. In the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes says, true prayer must be, thy will be done. But the implication relative to the will of God in this prayer is not a submission to the inevitability of evil or limitation. It is a knowledge that the will of God is always good. So when we say, thy will be done, we're not surrendering over to like, oh boy, I'm going to surrender over to this power, and who knows what that's. No, we're surrendering over a power to a power that is already trying to bring good into our lives. It's a power for good. In the scripture in Zechariah, it says, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Not by might nor by power, not by my forcing things to happen and making things happen and controlling everything, but by my surrendering to spirit. My surrendering to that power, that presence, that life that is infinitely intelligent. It's infinitely intelligent, and then it's infinitely loving. Wow, wouldn't we want to surrender into that? Wouldn't we want there to be an infinitely intelligent power that was also infinitely loving? Wouldn't we want to be in the flow of that power and presence? Roger Toole, let's see here. Oh, okay. No, I'm going to read from Ernest Holmes here. This book called Open at the Top, it's a biography of Ernest Holmes by Neil Volley, who passed away recently. It's very interesting to read about our founder, Ernest Holmes, because there's certain things that I knew and other things that I'm learning. And I didn't know just how powerful of a speaker Ernest Holmes was. Because I've watched talks, and in today's way that we give talks, his style, you wouldn't necessarily think of him as like this great speaker, but he would attract huge crowds wherever he went. And so there's this story in this book about when Ernest Holmes, he went and lived he grew up on the East Coast, in New England. He grew up on the East Coast, but his family moved to Los Angeles, and he got settled there, and he had some success there with teaching these principles. But then his brother moved to the East Coast, and he joined his brother on the East Coast for about 6 years, and had some success there, but really felt called back to Los Angeles. So he went back to totally start over in Los Angeles. And so here's what happened when he did that. It says he began by leasing the Ambassador Theater and speaking on Sundays. The crowds were small at first, only 75 people when he started. In a few months, however, the theater was crowded to its capacity of 625. 2 years later, in 1927, the Sunday morning talks were moved to the Ebel Theater, which seated 1,295 people. Within a year, that auditorium was too small, and the Sunday morning service in 1929 was moved to the Sola de Ora room of the Biltmore Hotel in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. Holmes spoke there for 5 years when again the crowds became greater than the seating capacity, and his Sunday talks were moved to a larger Wiltern Theater at Wilshire and Western Avenues where 2,800 people could be accommodated. Reginald Armour reports that here again, the successful performance of the previous years was repeated, and it wasn't long before we were turning away 400 to 500 people on Sunday. I just thought that's such a powerful story. I mean, it's also in a very short period of time. This is not like years and years and years and years. And it reminded me of someone who surrenders so much and allows themselves to be a conduit for spirit and what that can mean. And so people who knew Ernest Holmes and were aware of him at that time said he was unparalleled in his ability to speak, and that not only his words and not only his talk, but his presence, that you could feel his presence and you could feel some transformation taking place in yourself, like an enlightened being present with you. So how can we loosen up a little bit to be that conduit? If there's this great infinite power, infinite intelligence, based in infinite love that wants to do all kinds of things through us, then the only limitation would be to what degree am I allowing that infinite power and presence and love, creativity to express through me? And to what degree am I getting in the way of it? Or as Emerson said, that very direct quote that Emerson says, get your bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. Right? The divine circuits, so much wanting to happen through us. It's a movement from Kingdom 2 of consciousness that we talk about to Kingdom 3 of consciousness. Kingdom 2 of consciousness is where it's done by me. I make it happen. Spiritual mind treatment is part of that. Nothing wrong with that. Right? Nothing wrong with that, because even in spiritual mind treatment, as Holmes said, it's still about thy will be done ultimately. But when we move into Kingdom 3, we even step into a greater degree of surrender, a greater degree of being used by the power. Rather than us using the power, we're being used by the power. And it's that openness that we have, that letting go, because when we're using the power, we're using it from our finite human sense of what is possible. When we allow the power to use us, we let go of that finite human sense of what's possible. Because now we're open to what's possible to the infinite, as opposed to, in my human finite sense of things, what's possible. So now I become this amazing conduit. I think that is our greatest artists, our greatest scientists and discoverers and inventors and writers and teachers, and our greatest in every form of endeavor are those that have allowed themselves to get out of the way. And most of them probably would acknowledge that. You would say, wow, you are so good at this. And they would say, wow, it's not just me. There's something that happens in me. Something takes me over, right? Great singers, great performers, great artists. There's something that takes them over, right? They get into a space. I bet if we talk to Merritt, there will be something when he's in that moment, right? And he's just playing that piano so amazingly. I bet there's a moment where it's no longer just Merritt the human being. I bet there's a moment where there's such a surrender to spirit that something amazing comes through that even he is watching himself play the piano and saying, wow, this is pretty good, right? That's the way it works. The way it works is when we surrender, we open up, even we are amazed at what's happening, even though it appears that we're the one doing it. But we say, not by power nor might, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. By my spirit. Because I have gotten out of the way and allowed myself to be used in some great way. In the Tao of Leadership, John Hyder, that's a model book for me for leadership, by the way, the Tao of Leadership. I just love that because it's not being forceful, right? It's working with things, and it's working with the flow, and it's working with people. And in this book, he says, the paradox of letting go. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I have, I receive what I need. These are feminine or yin paradoxes. By yielding, I endure. The empty space is filled. When I give to myself, I become more. When I give of myself, I become more. When I feel most destroyed, I am about to grow. When I desire nothing, a great deal comes to me. Have you ever struggled to get work or love and finally given up and found both love and work were suddenly there. Do you want to be free and independent? Conform to God's law. That is how everything happens anyway. When I give up trying to impress the group, I become very impressive. But when I am just trying to make myself look good, the group knows that and does not like it. My best work is done when I forget my own point of view. The less I make of myself, the more I am. When I yield to the wishes of the person working, I encounter no resistance. This is the wisdom of the feminine. Let go in order to achieve. The wise leader demonstrates this. Love it. Love that book. So we're in Kingdom 3 consciousness, and here's the story that's similar in a way to the one that Sharon read you here, but I'm still going to tell it because I just picked up Dr. Roger Teale's book, This Life is Joy, and I got to know Roger a little bit while I lived in Colorado, and he was the leader. He grew up as a child. He grew up in Mile High Church of Religious Science in Lakewood, Colorado, and then he ended up becoming the minister of that church. And he led that church for, I would say, at least 25 years and recently retired within the last few years. And he took that church to the point where it was the largest Science of Mind center anywhere in the world, and still is right now. And so he wrote a book called This Life is Joy, and I finally picked it up. And here's a story that he tells in the story. He says, 2 men were walking together from their village to another one further down the river. It was early morning and dew was still on the leaves and grass. As they walked along the riverbank, they became lost in conversation, and when the bank became steeply sloped, they both lost their footing and slipped into the rushing waters. One of the men began fighting the current fiercely. He struggled against the water, trying to swim upstream or toward the bank. But the force of the water was too much for him, and he soon became exhausted. It wasn't long before he was taken under and drowned. Though the other man was quickly separated from his friend, he took a different approach. He relaxed and surrendered to the force of the currents. Lying on his back in the rushing river, he allowed it to take him where it would. Occasionally, he lay an arm in the water to change his direction and to avoid a rock or log. After a while, the river deposited him safely on a sandy edge. He got up, walked away from the river, and to his surprise, found himself just outside the village that was his intended destination. Sounds like my story this week, right? When we let go, we get out of the way, we move with life, we flow with life, as opposed to resisting life and fighting life and struggling against life and trying to control life. How could you loosen your grip a little bit today? How could you make a little bit more space for grace? How could you make a little bit more space for that infinite power and that infinite love and that infinite intelligence and creativity to express more fully through you and to you and as you, and bring so much more good and peace in your life? How much peace can we get when we're struggling against life and we're resisting life and we're resisting what's happening? There's no peace there. But when we start to go with the flow of life, we start to accept what is. We start to embrace what is. We move with what is. I was thinking about the martial art, the Japanese martial art of Aikido this morning, in the same way, right? In Aikido, it's very interesting. In Aikido, part of Aikido is to defend yourself without injuring your opponent. So you're literally, even though it appears to be your opponent, you're still working with your opponent. I've never practiced it, but I guess perhaps you deposit him very nicely on the floor. If you're being attacked, you deposit your opponent very nicely on the floor. He's not injured at all, but he's on the floor now and not up attacking you. Again, it's one of those flow with life. Flow with life. Flow with the current. Flow with what's happening. Not resisting it. Right? As this is happening, one thing we could say, if this is happening, there must be something good in it for me. There must be something good happening here because all things work together for my good. So I no longer have to fight against life. They used to call the one book that they wrote about New Thought, which we're a part of, Science of Mind, Centers for Spiritual Living, we're a part of the New Thought movement. And the book, the classic book about us was called Spirits in Rebellion. And at some point, I thought, that title is old now and no longer really represents us. It represented us at a time where we were out of the mainstream. We were so different from everyone else. And so we were kind of like these spirits, not really in rebellion, actually. I still don't like that I don't think that word fits us so well because it wasn't spirits in rebellion, actually. It was spirits surrendered to a higher idea, right? To a new idea that wanted to be made known. And of course, now we have hundreds of centers around the world and, thousands and thousands and millions to some degree of people practicing these principles of this New Thought teaching that wanted to emerge and wanted to be born. But how could we call it spirits in rebellion when the core teaching is about oneness? What could you possibly be rebelling against when there's all is one? When you are me and I am you, what could I possibly be rebelling against? There is nothing to rebel against. So we move with life. We move with the flow. Even those that seem to use us or seem to be against us, we move with them. We don't need to fight them or resist them. We move with them. How can we shift things by moving with them? What's the energy that's taking place here? When I see someone bring an idea to me as a leader that is different than what I think it ought to be, it's like, how can I move with that idea? What is in that idea that would serve that I can now move with? How could you loosen your grip today a little bit on life? How could you open up a little bit more? To let go a little bit more. Like if your knuckles are really white, you're holding on so tight, your knuckles are white, how could you just loosen that grip a little bit, right? Allow a little circulation, in the body to take place. We just loosen up a little bit. We're not holding on so tightly. We're not trying to control every little thing. How could you let go just a little bit more today? What's the opening? Where's the opening for you today for spirit, for that infinite love, infinite intelligence, infinite power and creativity to express through you? What's just a little way today, or a big way if you choose, that you could let go and open up and allow for this great power to be more fully expressed? That's the practice that I invite you into this week, even as we move with all the events in our world. How could we move with those events, not resisting them, accepting what is, and moving with it, and really looking at, because everything is working together for good, so the only thing that will be missing is our seeing the good that is in everything that's moving. So how could we begin to look for the good? It's like, okay, everything's working together for good, so how could this be really good? One of the things for me is I've always flirted with the idea of being a monk. Never seriously, because there were certain aspects of it that didn't really meet what I would want in life. But there were other aspects of it that I thought, wow, I could definitely be a monk. And so during this period, not quite, but I'm kind of getting my chance to be a monk for a little while. I spent a lot of time at home, a lot of time by myself, a lot of time in my spiritual practice, which is pretty common anyway. But it's a very, compared to my normal life it's a very solitary life at the moment. And as I really embrace that, and I really be with that, there's a real sweetness that's coming about for me personally. There's a real sweetness, This is a part of the time I was kind of like, oh man, I want to be out again. I want to be with people, and I want to be socializing. I want to be doing this. And the more I surrender to it, the more I be present with it, there's a real sweetness to it. Like a falling in love and embracing myself in a way but that's very different. Like a enjoying being with myself. That's very different than any time before. Because before, if I get tired of being with myself, I just go out and be with other people. Whereas in this, it's like, I'm tired of being with myself, but I still need to be with myself. And there's a real sweetness in that it's kind of like forced me in a way, but in surrendering to it and embracing it, there's come about kind of a sweetness in it, where my relationship with myself and my relationship with being at home, and I do have 2 cats, so I get to be with my 2 cats, right? And yesterday there was a very sweet moment where both of them came up. I fell asleep on the couch for a moment, like a mid-afternoon nap. And I woke up and both my cats were snuggled right up against each other and right up against me. And I thought, how sweet of a moment is this? So where can you let go a little bit today? Where can you come into more acceptance today of what is, rather than fighting it or resisting it, or thinking, you have the right idea or someone else has the wrong idea? Where can you let go, surrender, open up to what wants to happen for you, knowing all things work together for good? So that means something really good is trying to happen. Like my coming into this real sweet space with what appeared to be a negative thing called, isolation or solitary existence in a way. Not completely, of course. Where's the opening for you this day? So the invitation this week is to really notice those places where you're really holding on. These places where you're pushing, where you're trying to push and force something to happen. These places where you're resisting. These places where you're trying to be in control. And just observe it and see where you can make subtle differences. It's really subtle sometimes, right? It's just like a slightly different way of looking at it. How could I look at this differently? How could I be with this differently? How could I flow with life rather than resist life? How could I open myself to be a vehicle and a vessel through which good happens, as opposed to trying to control what happens? That's the invitation for this whole week. Just to notice, make those subtle shifts, and then just enjoy what happens as a result. And notice when grace comes in, when grace shows up. Notice when you let go. Notice those little things that shift and happen. Thank you so much. Blessings. Let's turn within for prayer for a moment. And so we just know in this moment that great truth, that God is, Spirit is, that there is one infinite wholeness, one infinite love, one infinite power and presence and intelligence. And there's only one. There's not 2, there's only one. There is no separation. There is just that one power and presence that is expressing in an infinite number of ways and forms and persons and beings. And so we recognize that one power and presence, that one life is the very power and presence that is living through and as us. That each of us is a divine expression of that one. And then in this recognition that I am a divine expression of that infinite power, presence, love, creativity, wholeness that is Spirit. Oh boy. That is beautiful, that I am one with all of that each of us are one with all of that. And so in that moment of realization, we get out of the way and we open ourselves widely to be the fullest expression of that. Not in a controlled way, not in a forced way, just in an allowing way. And so I know today that we do have the power to make that shift. We have the wisdom and the discernment to make that shift, to let go just a little bit or to let go a lot, and to open the way for this great good that is trying to happen for us constantly, all the time. All the time, Spirit is trying to bless us in such big ways. And I know today that we have the power, the discernment, the courage, the love for ourselves and life to open the way for this great power and presence to express for us in some greater way. And so in great gratitude for this truth, and great gratitude for this awareness, and great gratitude for all the good that is flowing forth right here and right now, I just let this be and I release this word. I know that it is done. And please join with me in grounding it and accepting it with the words, and so it is. And now we'll have some music. You so much, Merit. Ah, yes. Love the way Spirit shows up through each of us so beautifully, so magnificently, especially when any individual is willing to allow themselves to be used in amazing ways. So we've reached our offertory time, and many different ways you can give to the center. You can send a check to our P.O. Box made out the Center for Spiritual Living, and that P.O. Box is 217. And yes, I don't know why I'm not seeing what I usually see here. All right, so, and also you can go to our website, centerforspirituallivingbakersfield.com, and hit the donate button there. So thank you so much for the way you continue to give to the center. Your gifts allow us to keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to really start to look at all kinds of innovative ways that we can really be in community. It's kind of like what we talked about today is how do we start to flow with what's happening rather than be on hold for a while. So stay tuned to see what, and I invite you also to let us know what are some creative ways that we can be in full, thriving community, even during a pandemic. So share your ideas with us. We'll be also praying on that, but I know something good really wants to emerge. So let us say this affirmation, this offertory affirmation together. Divine love blesses this gift. It is circulated with love, and it is returned to me pressed down and overflowing. I am a happy giver and a grateful receiver. Our center is blessed, and so it is.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so grateful for all that we have. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. We are so grateful. We are so blessed. And Scott is coming up to give us our announcements today.
Better. Good morning. So happy to be here this morning, and I have a very special announcement. We are going to have a community meeting. It will be on August 16th. It will be via Zoom, and the purpose of the meeting is to approve Reverend Gregory Toole as our senior minister. So I hope that you will be able to join us. That will be 2 more Sundays from now. And other announcements, put the community meeting in your calendars. It's going to always be on the second Sunday of the month. Join us for our spiritual connection meeting via Zoom every Monday at 6. And don't forget about the yard sale. We are going to have it one day, and it seems like the donations continue to arrive. And if you go down into the Children's Center in the basement, you're going to see a lot of good stuff. So look forward to that. And today, our practitioner, as you know, is Sharon, and Ann is also our practitioner. And any time that you have a situation where you need something improved, increased, eliminated, or healed, they would be honored to have a confidential one-on-one spiritual mind treatment, which would be over the telephone. So with that, roof sponsorships are still coming in, and we appreciate those donations as well. And that is all I have.
All right, so we'll close with the peace song today. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our power, united all are we. Let us walk with each other
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Merritt. Thank you all for tuning in today. Have a very blessed week. Go out, surrender, open up. Life is good. So we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.